Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Friday, February 4th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times, here with Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling. We're coming to you a little bit later this week due to the snowstorm, kind of delayed things a bit and kind of shut down the government for a while. So it's a little bit lighter week in terms of politics. So we're gonna have a truncated edition this week. But we wanted to start off talking about the Indiana governor's race, some developments. What are the latest developments there, Doug?
Well, there was no blizzard of political news this week, but there's some stuff going down in the governor's race a little bit. Mm-hmm. Mike Pence, of course, is the leading candidate, even though he's still undeclared in the Republican side. But there's another candidate who's popped up. Guy by the name of Jim Wallace.
And that name is familiar to me. Can you fill us in a little bit about?
Well, that's his problem, is he doesn't have the name recognition in this corner of the state. He's a guy who apparently was from DeMott. There was a small letter writing campaign from Kankakee Valley High School students several weeks ago, maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months, to try to boost his campaign and urge him to run. You know, kind of the Draft Daniels type of thing, but for high school students, for Jim Wallace. He has a company, TWG Capital, that's down around, Fishers in that area, north suburbs of Indianapolis. And so he sent out a note to all the party people earlier this week, saying that, recently in any case, saying that, hey, I'm interested in running and I want to introduce myself and so forth. Mm-hmm. So he's got to build a lot of name recognition in a hurry if he's going to try to be a serious candidate.
Well, it's tough when we don't recognize his name up here, and he's from from DeMott, so yeah. He's going to have to get to those people in Rising Sun in Evansville pretty quick.
And I think any Republican is going to have a hard time, if Mike Pence does indeed run, any Republican is going to have a hard time, I think, overcoming Mike Pence's A, name recognition, and B, his the respect he has within the party.
And the amount of capital he'll be able to generate.
Yeah.
Right. We presume Mike Pence is running because he was being courted for the presidential race. He and Governor Mitch Daniels, who's also being courted for the presidential race, had that sit down a couple of weeks ago, and then the result presumably was that Pence is going to run for governor, not for president.
He said he wouldn't run for president.
Wouldn't run for president.
He's doing kind of this listening tour right now, which is the prelude basically to saying, I'm running for governor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it looks like it'll be an interesting year for us.
And on the Democratic side, there's really no one that's emerged yet.
And that's going to be a problem for the Democrats.
Anyone you see, Mark?
Well, I mean, the early talk after Evan Bayh decided not to run was that we might have a couple of local boys take a shot at it. I know the former sheriff of Lake County, Roy Dominguez, has spent about the last year of his term more outside Lake County than inside, crisscrossing the state, trying to get some name recognition. Whether or not that's translated into an ability to raise money, an ability to get votes, I don't know. But I don't think he's entirely counted that race out. And
he'd be a good lieutenant governor candidate.
Well, I think that may be what he's aiming for, but in the absence of any serious gubernatorial candidate, he may by default end up being the gubernatorial candidate if they can't come up with someone that's got better name recognition and is a better fundraiser. And speaking of fundraisers, Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott, who says he's not going to run, is one of Indiana's most capable fundraisers. Mm-hmm. And if he were to decide to run, his father ran for lieutenant governor as a Republican, or he tried to run for lieutenant governor as a Republican. He was not successful, and but he wanted to be on John Mutz's ticket. I think Tom Jr. would like to succeed, where his dad did not win, sort of like the younger George Bush wanted to get Saddam Hussein after his father did not capture him.
So the question's going to be for McDermott: am I going to be, more influential as a fundraiser, as a guy who does that, or as a guy who runs in a really tough year to run for governor as a Democrat and possibly get defeated and then marginalized?
And the behind-the-scenes money man is always very influential, regardless of whether or not they hold office or run for office. So he may just stick to that and do some of what he does best, and that's raise money.
Yeah. Yes. The State House, as we mentioned earlier, was shut down for a while because of the ice. The ice was the problem more in Indianapolis than snow, but they did do something with vote center legislation.
Right. It looks like that's going to be the first thing to come out of the legislature. Successful legislation. And that's actually very good because we've been promoting that for a few years now.
Efficiency, savings.
Exactly. You need fewer poll workers if you have fewer polling places. You just, Lake County already, something like 52% of the polling places already are shared, by more than one precinct. So, it's not that different. But the idea is it just becomes more convenient to vote. You don't have to, go back to your own precinct where you live. You can go where you work. It's a lot easier.
And for the people have expressed some fear that people will be disenfranchised because they can't get to faraway voting places. The legislation calls for the denser the population, the more voting.
We mean by
centers.
Living near each other.
Well,
we're not insulting intelligence.
Not necessarily. But the more concentrated the population, let's say that,
right.
the greater number of voting centers you'll have, just will eliminate that problem.
Yeah, so that'll be good.
Yeah. Looking at Congress, this week we saw further action or inaction, depending on your opinion, in terms of the attempt by the Republicans to repeal health care reform. That repeal passed the House. This week it failed in the Senate as expected.
Right.
So
well, and there's also the judge's ruling that it was unconstitutional in that lawsuit that Greg Zeller was a part of as Indiana's Attorney General.
Two judges have ruled against it, and two judges have ruled for it. So you have a mixed bag. It's obviously going to end up in the Supreme Court at some point. So whatever you think of these decisions, they're kind of irrelevant. The end game is the Supreme Court.
Right. What's disappointing to me in all of this is that the Republicans are fighting to block it, but they're not coming out to say, okay, we agreed that the system was broken before. Here are our proposals to fix it.
Right. We hear repeal and replace, but we never hear what they're going to replace it with.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's
come up with some ideas.
That's the disconnect there.
Tort reform.
Yeah.
Indiana's got a very good system in that regard. So use the Indiana model. They've got to come up with some of these ideas and quickly if they're going to keep that.
Well, and one approach they could take, with their emphasis on kind of states' rights, is letting the states maybe take a bigger role in being kind of experimental labs in terms of what works and what doesn't. Letting there's I've heard talk of Vermont trying single payer, see how it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's good for one state or what works in one state will not always necessarily work in the other state.
Right.
What works in California because of its size and diverse population may not work in Georgia.
Yeah. And which is one of the complaints about the federal law is that it's a one-size-fits-all, and like you said, different states have different situations.
So we've gone from will it play in Peoria to will it work in California.
Right.
That's right.
Right. So, well, that's all we have for this week. Like I said, a little bit of a shorter version this week, but we'll be back next week. Snow will hopefully without all the snow. We'll be back next week for another edition of the Political Roundtable. So thank you for watching.
Thanks, Robert.